As at this point, I'm not aware that a letter from this MEP would have been registered with us. But of course, whenever a letter or request from MEPs arrives and is addressed to HRVP, then of course the HRVP responds in line with established practice. But since you raised this issue, let me make one remark on this claims and reports about alleged bowing down to external pressures on the side of the European External Action Service. Shortly, you should see behind me the website, which is basically the most visible and the most tangible proof of what we are doing in fight against disinformation. Disinformation was acknowledged as one of the serious threats and challenges for the European Union, and based on the decision of the highest decision-making body, meaning European Council, that means member states of the EU, the EAS is leading the activities with the aim to expose and debunk the misinformation and disinformation. We are doing it regularly through a dedicated website on the address www.eu-disinfo.eu, and I really hope that everyone who has any doubts about the transparency and quality of our work regarding disinformation has a look at this website. Apart from almost everyday updates of specific cases of disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories, we are publishing regular updates, especially now in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, about trends in disinformation, where we are summarizing in a form of a snapshot overview what we have observed in the open sources. And we put it together and we publish it in a more or less regular intervals. The first such report was published on the 19th of March, the second was published on the 1st of April, and the latest one was published last Friday. Whoever is interested in the truth and the facts can have a look at these 3 snapshot overviews in addition to everyday reporting on this website. There you will see absolute consistency in what we are doing in terms of summarizing and describing the trends, the campaigns, the specific cases, examples, and also the actors who are involved in the disinformation efforts directed against the European Union. So I absolutely refute and dispute any indications or claims that in our reporting we are bowing to any kind of external pressure.
Okay, thank you, Peter. David, is your question on external affairs? David Carretta.
C'est un follow-up par rapport à...
It's a follow-up on this subject, if that's okay. Peter, how can you explain changes to the report? The parts of the report, section of the report have been changed. Why have they changed? Were they changed if you were not under Chinese pressure? The first version
David, est-ce que tu peux t'assurer que ton micro reste?
It may not be a problem with the microphone. The system's a bit complicated. It's the question of feedback, really. That's the feedback we're getting from your officials as well. Well, I'm glad you've got that information. But basically, if your microphone is directed towards your clothes, we can't hear you as well. Okay.
The report was changed, and some parts of the report were erased after pressure from the Chinese embassy in Brussels. If you are telling us that we should go to the website to look at that and so on, no. My question is, why did you change the first version of the report after Chinese pressure if you are not bowing to Chinese pressure?
Well, let me put one thing very straight. There was no change, and there were no several versions of this document which was made public. We, as I think every organization has two separate processes when it comes to information, reports, analysis, etc. One strand or one track of these processes is internal, with internal documents and materials, which are designed for different purposes, different audiences, have different procedures. Then there are documents for publication. They are dealt with in a parallel, independent track, which is not necessarily linked to the first track, because they have different purpose, different content, different audiences, and undergo through a different editorial process and procedural process as well. So the notion of having the report published on Friday after watering it down, after changing it, is just misperception of the processes which go in every institution, including, I guess, in the media. You have also like internal communication that is designed for your internal use, and then you have something separate which is focused on your public output. So there are two different processes, two different documents, and the one is not reflecting the other necessarily. There is no link in the timetables. There is link maybe in the subject that deals with the same topic. But when it comes to the published report, again, I would urge you to read what we have published and what we are saying. And you will see that we don't hesitate to name the trends and to name the actors involved in spreading disinformation, including describing the ways how they are doing. I mean, it's naive to think that since we are working with open sources and basically with information which is out there for everyone who wants to check, that by omitting or not saying something, we will make it disappear or please someone. That's simply naive. That's absurd, excuse me. But again, I refute very strongly and decisively any notion that we bowed down to any kind of external pressure, because the publication of the EAS are undergoing only through internal processes, and their final version or the way how they look when they are published is determined by internal factors, not by external actors. And again, we are not bowing to any pressures. And again, who wants to see the facts and who wants to see the truth reads the latest report. And then if you want, compare with everything what we published before, the second report, the first report, and everything in between. I think there is huge consistency when it comes to stressing the threat posed by disinformation, naming the trends, illustrating the trends, and underpinning the trends with examples from the public domain, and naming the actors involved in these efforts.
May I have a follow-up?
Yeah, David, go ahead. But if you put in your question the answer to your question, it makes it a bit difficult, because in your question itself, you're saying, how do you explain that you bow to Chinese pressure, when Peter is clearly denying that that the EAS has bowed to Chinese pressure. So it makes it a bit difficult.
I can understand that, but your role is denying. My role is questioning you. Sorry, yeah?
Yeah, but your question is, how do you explain that you're bowing to Chinese pressure?
Eric, I'm sorry. I've seen a report redacted by the EAS mentioning some facts, and those facts were removed by the EAS in the redaction process after pressure from the Chinese.
So what's your question? Because if you say that that's the question, and Peter says it's not true.
Why in the redaction process did you remove facts?
Okay, so if we are going to talk about facts, because I mean there can be a lot of interpretations, but I think for you and for us, the facts should be sacred. The facts, for me at least, are sacred. And the fact is that there are two reports. One report, internal, designed for internal consumption, and another report prepared independently for public consumption based on completely different procedures, different deliberations, without any outside interference. Let me repeat, any outside interference. Whatever was published on Friday was in line with what we were doing before on the 1st of April, 19th of March, and what we are doing all along. We've been tasked by exposing and publishing disinformation. This is our job. I mean, not doing our job would be shooting ourselves in our leg. And I have the feeling that sometimes by focusing on small, petty, partial details, we are losing the big picture from the side. The big picture is the disinformation and the threat it poses. How much of the time and energy was spent on really using this site to help you to report on disinformation and the disinformation actors? I would really invite everyone who is interested in the truth and is able to read with open eyes, without any bias, to see that report, to see the conclusions, to see the facts in that report, and then anyone is free to make up his or her opinion, but these are the facts which are on the table, which are on the website, www.eu-disinfo.eu, and we can spend like a lot of middays explaining. If you want, you will never believe that. But these are the facts. We are not bowing to any pressure, and we think that the facts, as they are published on this website, are proof of it. And then I would really ask, like, who is profiting from this? I mean, who's qui bono? Whose profit it is that we are engaged now in these exchanges about procedural misperceptions when we have a big enemy to fight, which is disinformation, because disinformation is affecting the lives of our people, is posing a challenge for our societies. That's why it is on the table of the foreign ministers, prime ministers, when they are meeting and discussing. And disinformation is very dangerous because, especially in the context of coronavirus, the spread of disinformation can affect people's health and people's lives. And that's why we have to confront it strongly, and we do it with determination, in line with our mandate, which we were given by the member states. And we have nothing to hide, because what we are publishing are facts.
Okay. So, I think, other questions on this issue. Christian, tu as demandé la parole. C'est sur...
Christian, is it on this matter or relating to external affairs? Christian, you have the floor.
Attends, parce que moi, il faut que je me retrouve la suite.
We can hear you. I have a very simple question. You said that there's no pressure. What about the internal email drafted by an EAS official referring to threats from the Chinese and possible reactions if the report were to be published? This email has been picked up on by the New York Times, and there's a whole article on that saying that there has been pressure to that effect. I had another question. What's the point of these reports? When you interview Mr. Borrell and ask to what extent he's worried about the Chinese, I asked a similar question about Russia. He said, no, this is not the point. What's the point of highlighting disinformation campaigns if you then crush them by saying that there's no problem at all?
Alors, sur ta première question, je vais répondre.
On your first question, we never comment on leaks, internal leaks. So we never comment on leaks from Commission services or the EEAS. Let me be absolutely clear about that. And I think you should be wary of this type of information with references to officials, because there might be consequences. On your second question, I'll give the floor to Peter. Yes, on your second question, perhaps you could listen to what High Representative Borrell said last Monday at the External Affairs Commission in the Parliament. A lot was said about disinformation campaigns, and I think the High Representative was very clear. We can send you the transcript if you so wish.
Merci. On external affairs.
Yes, it is, and it's on that very issue. I'll try to get it from another angle. Did you receive any complaints from member states on the facts stated in the report? From member states, not external actors. Thanks.
Again, I will have to refer you in this case as well to the usual rule and habit that we are not really publicly discussing the communication we have on everyday basis with either with our member states or even with our outside partners from countries all around the world. So unfortunately, I cannot comment on internal communications. As a rule, in general, whatever you can ask about those communications and exchanges.
Thank you, Athanasios. Okay, I have Michaela. Michaela, is it on external affairs?
No.
Okay, then please hold on. Then I would like to, unless there are further questions, no, on external affairs. Tom, you're not on my list, but I'm told that you are trying to ask a question on external affairs.
Oui, c'est sur le même sujet.
Yes, it's on the same topic. So has the Commission been in touch with China about this report? So did they get in touch with China about this report before it was published? I think the answer is obvious, but I'll let Peter take the floor again. So once again, our publications are strictly confidential. On our internal communication or external communication, I can't comment because these are diplomatic exchanges and it's not customary to discuss the content of these types of exchanges in the public sphere. So sorry about that.
Are there other questions on external affairs? Natalie McNellis, is it on external affairs? You have the floor, Natalie. You seem to be typing, but we can speak.
Yeah, I cannot. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
No, sorry, my question is not about external affairs.
Okay, so we'll come back to you later.